You didn't fail, you outgrew your foundation, and the cracks at the top are settlement from footings that were poured for a smaller building. The fix is never patch the wall, it's go back down and reinforce. The values, the vision, the leadership, the finances, the mindset, and then the walls and the roof too, all sized for where you're taking the building next.
This is Conquer Contractor Chaos, built for the contractor that's ready to run a business that works for them and creates the life they've been fighting for. Tune in to get the tools, systems, and strategies that are battle-proven to set you free. One move each episode, straight talk, things you can use today. Take your time back, be home for dinner, do the work, lead your crew, love your family, conquer the chaos.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Conquer Contractor Chaos Show, and today I'm going to be talking about an analogy that is being used far and wide in LinkedIn posts from coaches. And I'm going to use it, but I'm going to put my own spin in it and make it a little bit more contractor specific, because I think that this one is really going to resonate with you guys. If your business is getting close to 7 figures and it feels harder than it did back at 250, like everything's on fire, every decision runs through you, you're working more than you did when you were half this size, I want to tell you something that should feel like a relief. You're not bad at business, nothing went wrong, you didn't break anything, you just outgrew your foundation. Here's what nobody's going to tell you about a foundation. It's not just solid or not solid. A foundation is engineered for a specific load, a specific weight, a specific height on top of it. Think deep pile foundation versus an unreinforced block foundation. One is built to withstand earthquakes, the other is built for a single, unchanged structure on top. You can pour a perfect footing for a single-story house, beautiful concrete done right, and then if you stack 3 stories on top of it, maybe it won't feel right away, but after it settles, it might settle unevenly. And a few months later, you get a crack running straight through the whole thing. And here's the part that matters. The crack shows up at the top, but the problem is always down at the footings, sometimes even unseen underground. That's your business. You poured your foundation when you were at 250,000 owner-operator level, and it was the right foundation for that. But then you grew, and you grew, and you grew, and now you've got a $2-3 million building sitting on footings that were never engineered to carry more than a bungalow. That everything's on fire feeling that you're feeling right now, that's not you failing, that's settlement. The foundation can't carry the load that you're putting on it. And most owners try to fix it by patching the wall up top, by hiring another person, working another weekend, selling another job, when the actual problem is 2 floors down. I remember this moment clearly for me. The moment that this came for me personally was when we tried to shoot for $1 million for the first time. We had the work, the crew, the tools, and everything was falling into place. We were making progress and building momentum, and we locked down almost hundreds of thousands worth of work for the summer. And just when we actually started diving into it, we started to lose crew members. We pushed them too hard. I even had a sales guy go off sick with stress. It was just too much too soon. And what I later realized was that we were building purely for revenue. I got shiny object syndrome on 7 figures and ended up neglecting my people and pushing them too hard, and our customer experience dropped off too. And so did our Google star rating, which lost us more leads in the future. So let's name the honest part, and then we'll get into the practice. I'll be straight with you because you guys will catch this. A house gets engineered once, totally aware of that. And it gets built once because the architect knows the final height on day one, your building keeps getting taller every single year if you're playing your cards right. So here's what smart contractors actually do when the load changes. They don't just build up and hope. They go back down and they underpin. They extend the footings deeper and wider to carry the new weight before they add a floor. Amateurs add the floor and hope. Pros reinforce the footings first. That's the whole episode. You don't pour your foundation once and move on. You re-engineer it every year, sized to where you're taking the business next, not where it is today. And it's not just the foundation. Every layer of the house has to get reinforced as you go up. And I'm going to walk you through that. So let's look at the 5 components of a solid foundation. The same 5 that you started with, but every one of them has to grow to carry this new weight. I'll start with the most important one, core values. At $250,000 a year, you're the culture. You're in every single room. You're on the truck, every job. People just absorb how you do things. But at 20 employees, you're not in every room anymore. And unwritten values aren't a culture. They're 20 people guessing how to act. Reinforcing this footing specifically means actually writing them down and hiring and firing by them so the culture holds even when you're not standing there. The second one is going to be your vision and your mission. At $250,000, vision can anchor a $3 million decision. If you haven't recast where this is going for the bigger building, your team is making calls against a target that doesn't exist anymore. So we have to reinforce it every year. Recast the vision, paint the targets, paint the picture for the crew, show them where they buy in and what they get from it, and you'll be able to recast that vision for the building that you're about to become. The next one is your leadership aptitude. At 250K, we all lead the same way. You lead by just doing it, right? You're the best on the tools, the best closer, the hardest worker. But here's the trap. At 7 figures, still being the best hammer swinger is the problem. Your job has fundamentally changed. Your job description is different. You have to lead other people now. And if your leadership footing is still, I'll just do it myself, you are the crack that will appear in your foundation. You will be the bottleneck that the whole building is settling into. Next is going to be your level of financial understanding. At 250K, you could run the whole thing off your bank balance and a gut feeling. And at 2 to 3 million, that gut feeling will absolutely crush you. Even while you're slammed busy, without job costing or without knowing your real margins, without forecasting your cash, you can be the busiest you've ever been, but quietly going broke. This is typically when most contractors get to me, is when that is happening. And let me tell you a quick cautionary tale on that one, because it's construction. Back home, where I'm from in Scotland, there is a company called Carillion, the second biggest construction company in the UK. Over £5 billion in sales. And in 2018, they absolutely collapsed, almost overnight, with about $1.5 billion in debt and only about 29 million in the bank. The biggest construction firm in the country, gone. Why? It wasn't the market. They kept taking bigger and bigger contracts on razor-thin margins. They were piling on debt and with no cash underneath it. A government inquiry actually looked into it and they called it a relentless dash for cash. $5 billion in revenue sitting on footings that it just couldn't carry. Revenue is not a foundation. Don't confuse a big building with a strong one. This was a mistake that I made. I'm going to tell you that story in a minute. Let me give you the last one for the foundation. It's the mindset. And more particularly, the mindset of scaling. This is the one most people get backwards. It's not grind harder. Anyone at this level already grinds. I've learned that there is no more motivation that someone can give you that will be more powerful to a contractor than going broke. The mindset that actually scales is the discipline to go back down and reinforce before you stack more weight on top, to strengthen the footings instead of just chasing another floor of revenue. So now that your foundation is poured, what goes up next? That's right, it's the framing, right? We all know that as contractors. We put the walls up and the subfloor. The walls are your guardrails. That's your systems, your procedures, your sales workflows, your production processes, your ideal client niche, your KPIs, your customer experience standards. At 250 grand, all of that can live in your head and it works. But at 7 figures, your head doesn't scale. Every wall has to come out of your head and get built into the business. Written, systemized, taught, and lived, and then rebuilt taller as the building grows. The KPI that you use to eyeball now needs a real dashboard. The niche that fit you at 250k might need sharpening because now you can't be the cheap option and the premium one. Walls aren't built once. You tear them out and you build them bigger as you go up. Now, you've all heard my story of how I nearly died in a customer's elevator from stress and how the key to rebuilding the business back was to develop rock solid systems. The same systems that are in our skill group for those of us who are in the program. Without clearly defined systems that are in writing, that are practiced, and that are lived, we would never have been able to grow a sustainable business beyond 7 figures. This foundation just wasn't strong enough. So we have to take a look at the systems and the processes that we're putting inside our business so that we can operate within them. And not only you, but everybody in the business can operate within them without necessarily having to be told what to do. Get them out of your head and get them on paper. Once the walls go up, of course comes the roof. And we need to ask, is the roof sized for a bigger storm? The roof is your protection layer. That's your contracts, your client contract, your subcontract, your employee contract, but it's also the standards on who you allow onto your team and your biggest safety net, which is cash flow. Here's the thing about a taller building. It catches more weather. The contracts that were fine on a $5,000 job will expose you badly on a $300,000. The hiring standard that was anyone with a pulse in a truck at $250K will end up sinking you when you go to scale, because now one bad hire touches a dozen jobs and the cash cushion that felt safe covering a small payroll is dangerously thin against a 7-figure one. The bigger you build, the more roof you need. Reinforce the protection in proportion to the weight of the building that you're trying to produce. But we're not done yet. And this is the layer that we mostly get caught out with, the finishes. The finishes, which are the new trucks, the premium gear, the nice fancy office, the branded everything, we need to start looking at those differently. And here's the reframe for where you are now. A finish is added load with no additional structural capacity. That new truck doesn't make your foundation one bit stronger, but it absolutely makes the building heavier. More overhead, more fixed cost, more weight on footings that might already be settling or even failing right now. And that doesn't make those finishes bad or the fancy interior bad. We all love them. But the test is just one question. Are you buying this from a position of strength, reinforced and ready to carry it because it will drive real growth? Or are you doing it on credit to look like you've already made it? The rack truck that wins you a bigger job that you can comfortably carry, that's strategy. The same truck on payments that you can't really cover, but to feel successful while the foundation is cracking, well, that's just piling weight on a settling building that might already be cracking right now. It's the same truck, but completely different decisions. Let me tell you a quick story about a contractor that I spoke with a few years ago. He quit his job after a bad argument with his boss, and he decided that he was going to go start his own business, right? Typical story of most of us, how we got into the positions of owning our own contracting businesses. Either we quit and got into business, or we built them on the side and moved into them eventually. But this guy was hot-headed. He was a great craftsman, and I've seen photos of his work. He was absolutely flawless. He could make a vision come to life like Bob Ross behind his canvas, but he made a crucial error. He went out and he rented an office. He signed up for a new truck lease, fancy GMC Sierra, something or other, and he bought himself all the red tools on his credit card at Home Depot. And he justified this by saying, that's what my old company had, and they're professionals. And he later went on to land a bigger house fit project. But by that time, he had to use the customer's down payment to cover his credit card and his lease bills. And when it came time to start the work, he didn't have enough cash to cover the materials and the subs to actually get started. And he had to shut down his business after a lengthy lien process that had been filed on him by the customer. So you see, the finishing is added from a strength that's already been paid off. If you add too much too soon, you're going to end up regretting it. And you have to use your numbers to make it real. A really good quote that I love to repeat in coaching calls is, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree was today. So what we mean by that is if you don't have your financial skill set, being able to read your numbers or get your numbers together, that's a really good place to start before you start focusing on adding things to the fancy interior that make you feel good. So now that you've got your foundation poured, your walls are up, your roof is on, and you've started building out the interior, well, now this is where you're going to likely invite in some sort of inspector. You need an inspection from someone who isn't you. A coach, advisors, your actual numbers in the hand of someone who has no reason to flatter you. A structured outside review of the whole structure, so to speak. That's not weakness. That's someone coming in to show you if you've got an underbuilt footing before it cracks instead of after. The builder is always too close to see it, so you have to get an inspector because you're too busy standing on the foundation. Things are crazy for you. So consider bringing in an inspector to give you a report back on what's been underbuilt, overbuilt, and where you should be putting your focus. And now that we've covered the foundation, we need to go over the fix. And I'll reference a classic Starbucks story and then give you the actual ritual for you to implement this in your business. So what does reinforcing actually look like? Let me show you how a giant did it. Back in the mid-2000s, Starbucks were opening stores so fast that they were actually cannibalizing themselves and watering down the entire experience that made them Starbucks. They'd outgrown their own foundation. So in 2008, the founder, Howard Schultz, came back as CEO, and he didn't push for more. He actually did the opposite. He slowed new store growth way down, and he closed about 600 underperforming stores. And he said, in his own words, that the whole point was to rebuild a healthy, solid foundation before trying to grow again. That's a multi-million-dollar brand stopped adding floors and went back down to reinforce the footings. If they have to do it, so do you. And here's how you make sure that you actually do it instead of just nodding along to this podcast. You build it into a rhythm. Once a year, before you set the growth goal, you inspect every layer and you reinforce it for the load that you're about to add on. That's exactly what we do in the Brave program's annual planning sessions. Every September through to December, we build the business plan, the budget, the forecast, the hiring plan for next year's building, for the extensions, so to speak. So the footings get extended before the weight goes on it. That's underpinning on a schedule. So here's the whole thing. Settlement from footings that were poured for a smaller building. The fix is never patch the wall, it's go back down and reinforce. The values, the vision, the leadership, the finances, the mindset, and then the walls and the roof too, all sized for where you're taking the building next. Get an inspector because you can't see your own footings, and remember that every finish is just weight until the foundation can carry it. Do it once a year on purpose before you grow, reinforce, and then build up. So if your building feels like it's settling right now, good, you just found the crack before it spread. Go down to the footing, that's where the fix has always been and always will be. Stop adding floors and hoping, go reinforce your foundation. And if you're somebody who wants to get the tools and systems that we use in the Brave Academy to help our clients plan out their next growth phase, get in touch with us. Find the link in the show notes and join our school group.